This is Teosha Charles and my wonderful co-host Joseph.
Hello and welcome back to Yasha.
Yes, thank you. I'm back to Animation Station. Yay! I'm so glad to be back.
Mm, Well, it's great to have you back, and I'm really excited for this next episode of the show.
Yes, me too. Especially my pick. I'm so happy. I watched this show ever since I was little, and I'm so glad it just generated to this awesome like I'm just so happy. I can't even talk right now. It's like all the way since I was a kid from 2003 all the way till now, and I freaking love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, thank you everyone for stopping by to listen to our podcast wherever you are. If you're at the gym or driving home or at work or just really bored and just need something to help yourself go to sleep. So today on the Animation Station podcast, we are doing something a little bit different where we talk about 2D animation, but today we're going to explore and talk about shows that are made completely in 3D.
That's right. It's so awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of anime shows through we're seeing 3D have has come a long way from what we had, 20 years ago to what it is even further than that, 30 years ago to what it is today. And it's pretty amazing what some of the development that has happened with 3D animation. Even though I seriously doubt 2D is going to go away, like it's never going to go away. But I'm seeing a lot of great development with the new 3D animations that are coming along, and we're kind of going to talk about a far range of some of the shows going back from the 90s to the 2000s and some that are very recent.
That's right. So let's see. Who's going to start first?
Well, I think since you've been on somewhat of a break, I think the listeners are anxious to hear what you have to talk about today.
Okay. Well, my pick it's been starting for years, but the recent cartoons I used to watch was TMNT from all the way 2003 all the way till now with the new 2019 TMNT. But we're going to talk about the 3D 3D TMNT, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 2012, which sadly ended in November 2017. Now, this show, oh my gosh, when I heard it was in 3D, I was like, they really hitting that.
Hmm.
Like they're really expressing so much in this. Like they Master Splinter looks different. He's taller. I mean, they like you always saw Master Splinter, which by the way, if you guys don't know, is the turtles master, other words, father, who took care of them since they were babies, or at least until they got mutated. Um, but like he's taller now. It's not, and the storyline kind of they always mix up the storyline when it comes to the show. Back in the 80s, he was Hamato Yoshi, who a human got turned into a rat, and then for the 2003 he was a rat who was a pet of Hamato Yoshi.
Hmm.
And but in the 2012, he's Hamato Yoshi he got some pet turtles for pet baby turtles and got hit with mutagen, which is mutagen, like
Hmm.
this type of green ooze. And it's like they change every single time. But so far, even the 2019 one, which is 2D, in 2019 one, they still kept the Homato Yoshi thing. But in 2012, Master Splinter, he's tall, he's super tall. Each one of the turtles has their own, of course, personality. Leonardo's the leader, Raphael's the tough guy, Donatello, he's the smart one, of course. Michelangelo, baby Michelangelo, he's like the pizza party animal type of guy. But their personalities are really different now. Their looks are, I should say. Leo, of course, he looks like the leader, but he still has that teenage energy. Donatello, who kind of seems older than all of them, he's actually the tallest one, and he has cute buck teeth. He has
Hmm.
well, not buck teeth, but he has a gap.
Yeah.
And he loves technology. If he wanted to change his bone staff, he could, but of course, I don't think Master Splinter would like that. But he's really, really good with technology. You thought seeing him in all the other TMNTs, he's really in this technology stuff.
Yeah.
Raphael. Oh, I'm sorry. What?
No, no, no. Go ahead. And I was gonna say, like, yeah, because like looking at these designs, I would say it kind of gave birth a little bit to what we saw in the movies that came later down the line for the Michael Bay films. How these designs kind of led into them, how they gave them their own personalities with you, because you kind of see it with Donatello, how he's taller and skinnier in this cartoon, where you kind of see him again in the films.
Right. It's amazing though how like I wouldn't say like well I would say their character development kind of stuck like trying to stick the same. I mean, you have the nerd, you have the one who listens to the parents all the time, you have the tough guy and like or like the baby brother or sister. Like they kept that, and I love that.
Hmm.
But it's kind of funny how they made Donatello the tall one, Leonardo kind of like tall, but not too tall, taller than Donatello. But then made Raphael and Michelangelo kind of the short ones, but made Raphael the strong one, of course. It's just
Hmm.
amazing how they did that. But
Yeah.
the best thing ever, you know what it is?
Mm.
The one who played, I forgot his name, and I kind of hate myself for it, but he plays the voice actor of Beast Boy off of Teen Titans, and I freaking am in love. He plays Michelangelo in the 2012 3D, and I freaking love it.
Oh, okay. I'm not entirely sure which voice actor that is. I do watch Teen Titans every once in a while, but no, I can't say that I would recognize his voice. Um, Looking at the type of art style, it's very similar to that of like the Star Wars, the Clone Wars animation video. How they look very blocky, but it has this sort of they almost look like they're made out of like wood or clay almost, but they're made from
Right?
3D. But it's just the way they're textured and how simple their shapes are, because they're not very detailed. They're just kind of blocky, and they just have
Right.
like these generic face animations.
Oh, and their face expressions are so great because they kind of do like an anime style a little bit, and I
Mm-hmm.
freaking love it.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, the guy who plays Michelangelo and also Beast Boy off of Teen Titans is named Gregory Michael Sitz, who is a California guy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because he's like, dude, awesome. I'm not trying to be, stereotypical, but
But I mean
but
that
it's
has
just
always
funny.
been Michelangelo's personality, which is kind of funny considering that they live in New York, so they have like no exposure to
Right.
the beach life. So him having that type of generic, stereotypical beach bum personality or surfer bum personality, I mean, kind of is contradictory or it doesn't really make sense. But it's just the just having something random showing that he's kind of the jokey lighthearted personality of the type, kind of to counter that of Raphael.
Right. It's funny though because like in the 80s they had Raphael's voice like like a little bit higher than
Hmm.
everybody else. But then now they're like, no, we're making him the tough guy, we're making him with the deep voice, or at least that raspy, or or a kind of like half and half of New Yorker voice,
Hmm.
or like they make sure to get Raphael like really well on when it comes to his voice. Back
Yeah,
then it was like super high.
yeah. I mean, well, most of them didn't really have in the 80s, like they didn't really have that much. They tried to give them some personality, like it was in their theme song, but really overall it wasn't that big of a deal until like later in these series where they actually did try to give them an attitude. And this isn't like the first time they had 3D, because I remember they had the film back in 2007, which predates this animated series, was completely in 3D. Now, even though the style isn't exactly the same, but it was still in 3D, which I think kind of gave birth to this series that started in 2012 to 2017. But I mean, it wasn't the first time we were exposed to this 3D aspect of it, because it did have the Ninja Turtle movie, the TMNT that came out in 2007, that was a 3D animation show. or 3D animated movie. And I think maybe that kind of gave, based on the reception that it received, I think this kind of gave the rise to the Nickelodeon show that came afterwards, with it being 3D, and also with Star Wars, the Clone Wars as well, that was going on because they have similar styles.
Right. Man.
But
It's just
besides
amazing
the,
how they just started though.
yeah, it was pretty great, and even though the animations were pretty generic as far as like the way the characters were designed. I mean, they are pretty simple, but
Right.
I think they still have pretty great action scenes, even though it was still the same old, Ninja Turtles versus Shredder, the Foot Clan, and you know, Krang and all, Bebop, Rocksteady, the usuals.
Right.
It still had some pretty unique action shows. But overall, what would you say was some of like your most memorable episodes, or some of your favorite storylines that happened within the series?
Let's see. I think mine will have to be when they first meet the Shredder.
Mm-hmm.
I think his real name was Rukusaki.
Yeah.
And when they also met Karai for the first time. And I was like, oh my God. And the best part was when they had to fight him, or at least Leo had to fight him. He started liking Karai. And I was like, oh, okay. But the Shredder was the best fight scenes ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like the best. Now, it's funny how the way they designed the Shredder was actually kind of like the designs that they did back in the 80s. But I started looking down like the Shredder's designs and how they did his character, like how they represent his character. And it's funny because each time they either have him as an actual human being, um, an alien in a robot suit, or or a human again. Like they have their own certain things, and it's hilarious to me.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, the Shredder fights are the best, hands down.
Yeah. Mm. Well, I mean, they always have to make them good because that's like their main rival, and even Shredder, Bebop, Rocksteady, even though they have a ton of other villains. I mean, you can't really uh, sort of go halfway with the Shredder conflicts.
Yeah, that's true. But it's in 2012 they made the Shredder and Splinter have like they had them as really close friends, which is kind of what they did back in the 80s too, which they
Mm-hmm.
had Hamato Yoshi and Arukasaki actually friends, but in the 2012 one they actually had them fighting over a girl, which which was Splinter's wife. And because Haruku Saki actually liked Splinter's wife and wanted her to be his, they was fighting over her, or fighting in the temple, which actually was a good fight too, until an
Mm-hmm.
accident happened and accidentally killed Splinter's wife. But it's funny because they made Karai as Splinter's daughter, which I was like, whoa. But it's weird how they actually made that work, because we knew back in the day that Karai was actually an orphan, but we
Mm-hmm.
never knew her parents. So it's funny how they made that actually work with the show. So it's amazing.
Hmm.
Oh, and I also noticed another thing in the 2012, TMNT 3D series. Whenever they have like a flashback, it's like
Mm-hmm.
a 2D flashback, and I'm like, wow. And when I first saw it, I was like, it's amazing how they did that. Like everything else is 3D and then 2D flashbacks every single time. Or
Mm-hmm.
when Leonardo's watching his favorite show, like he fangirls over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, he has like a little show he always watches, and it's in 2D. And just looking at it, it's like, wow, that's hilarious to me. So, like, know how I said, like, each turtle has their own little personality and stuff? They have
Mm-hmm.
Leonardo as, like, they have Leonardo as, like, the anime nerd.
Yeah.
And it's, like, amazing how they do that. Yeah.
It is actually pretty
The
funny.
each character is amazing. Oh, especially Casey. When I found out they was bringing Casey and the way they made made his character, I was like, oh my gosh, because we know Casey as like the buff guy who
Yeah.
either goes out of control holding like a baseball bat, either with nails or whatever in it,
Mm-hmm.
and having like a freaking hockey mask. Like that's Casey Jones. And then you
Yeah.
see this kid with the bandana and like with the missing tooth. Like like it's funny though. And he mentions his background in the show, him having a dad and his little sister and stuff like that. And like looking at that, I'm like, wow, they really want to make sure that hey, this is Casey Jones. He's staying. Hope you like it.
Yeah.
I freaking love it.
Mm-hmm.
every single one. But I have a question for you though.
Mm.
From all the way to the 80s, all the way till now, if you had to think about it, who was your best April O'Neil?
Oh, well, I would have to say probably it would always have to be the original.
I
Be-
knew it.
I mean, because like that's the one I spent the most time with. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure if I were to like analyze and like watch like all the April O'Neils that have been in the animated series, both from the 80s through today, I'm sure I would be able to uh, pick one for sure. But it's only because I know the 80s one the best.
Right.
And she was always someone who kind of like her yellow jumpsuit outfit, which was to me is like a ridiculous outfit. But
Right.
I really think that just how much of a even though she was like a reporter, she was kind of like the inside person for because she reminded me a lot of Lois Lane from for Superman because I was really big into Superman and Batman during that time. So she kind of reminded
Right.
me of her a little bit, just like being nosy, but she would sort of she would have like the turtle com, the turtle cell phone, and she would like contact the turtles because like she was a reporter. So whenever something was going on, she would kind of give them, the inside scoop and give them the heads up, like, hey, this is going on. When really she was just kind of like doing her job as a reporter. So I always thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. If I had to pick on which April I would pick, it's either the 2003 or the one now. I didn't like the 2012 April. I'm sorry, guys. I
Mm.
really didn't. I mean, it was okay, but she wasn't my favorite.
And she was, yeah. I mean, she probably wasn't in it as much.
I
Not
mean,
much
okay,
development.
no, not at all. I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand that they made her actually a teenager in
Mm,
the 2012 one, but like she doesn't do as much. She
hmm
doesn't do as much until later, and they made her actually have finding out they made her as a mutant,
mm.
like a mutant hybrid kinda who has like mind powers. I was like, what? Okay, I'm confused now.
Yeah, that's a bit much. Just that way she can like do more combat oriented things or make her like an actual assistant to the team.
I guess.
Mhm.
But I did like 2003. The reason why I like 2003 is because she actually helped out the turtles, either working on the computer, telling them where to go, stuff like that, helping Donnie with the technical stuff. I like that. It's like she was actually doing something. And then you have the April now who actually fights. Even though she's not that strong, she actually fights. And I'm like, yes.
Because I remember those because even though she develops a relationship with Casey Jones, Casey actually has martial arts skills and talent. So that kind of
Right.
I guess it kind of leaks into it because he was training, she would train with him, and therefore she would offer assistance. So even though she wasn't exactly like the turtles side, because she was like that in the movie too, in the 2007 movie where she actually had some martial arts skills. So I think
Exactly.
I think it wasn't so much that she would assist Casey kind of because really like she didn't really like need to help out the turtles as much. It was more like her and Casey would kind of go off on their own missions and they would be like a partnership and kind of extend to assist the turtles if they needed it.
True. But you have to remember, in the 2007 movie, years have already passed when Leo. By the way, if you guys don't know the movie, basically after Leo left, I guess for his mission or whatever to be like a better leader or sharpen his abilities, a couple like 2 or 3 years already passed. So
Hmm.
by that time, I would expect April and Casey to be, be able to fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, because then they would be able to spar with the turtles who have years of training, and then they would be, bring them up to speed.
Right.
So,
But I have a question though. Like at the end of the movie, you
hmm.
notice when like after they was fighting those those stone warriors, when
Hmm.
Karai and Casey both come up from the rebel. You saw the way they looked at each other for a second,
Yeah, yeah,
like
that
it
was
was like a
actually,
romantic scene. I
yeah.
was like, wait, hold up. Hmm?
Well, they were living together, so at least I
No,
think they were.
I'm talking about him and Karai. It was him and
Oh, yeah,
Karai.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry, him and
yeah.
Karai kind of looked at each other like romantically, and I was like, mm?
I think maybe it was like more like a nod or something.
That was not enough.
No, I don't know.
that was a that was a stare and a half.
I guess so.
but yeah, I think they definitely got that idea from that because after seeing that, I was like, yes, and they also made a game out of it too,
Hmm.
which I played that.
I never did.
You need to. But they probably won't do it anymore. I think it was it no, it was a Xbox 360 game, I think.
Mm.
From what I can remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. But either way, wonderful show. Wonderful. All right, let me
So,
hear your wonderful
yeah.
pick.
Okay, so we're going back a little bit further than the 2000s. We're going to go back to the 90s a little bit to a show that I really loved during my childhood was Beast Wars, Transformers. And so I'm curious, like, does that ring a bell for you at all? Because like I heard no response from you. So
No.
okay,
No.
so you know about
It sounds familiar, but
yeah.
nah.
So this ran from 96 to 99, and this is sort of like it's a Transformer series. It was made completely in 3D, and it kind of takes place sort of after and yet before the Transformers. So, do you, for the regular Transformers, you were aware of the regular Transformers: Optimus Prime, Megatron, Starscream,
Hmm.
Bumblebee, all those. So,
Yep.
in the cartoon series, what happens is that you're aware that they're fighting on Cybertron. They have their war, and one of the things why they come to Earth is because they're looking for energon. Energon is what gives them energy. It fuels their batteries. It's like their their life force, their blood. And they've used, one of the reasons why Cybertron is dying is because they've used up all the energon from their conflict and war. So therefore, they must find another planet for more energon, which is um, they find Earth. The Decepticons find Earth, and they're like, we're gonna go to this planet, and we're just gonna drain it for fuel so we can have finish this war. And the Autobots, try to stop them while evacuating Cybertron at the same time on the Ark, which is the name of their ship. Now, they go through this portal, which takes them to Earth. Now, at the time, this is like millions of years ago, like right after I would probably say like when the dinosaurs are roaming the earth, which is what gives us the Dinobots. So that's kind of like the time frame. So millions and millions of years ago is when the time period of Megatron and Cyber and Optimus Prime. They come to Earth, they crash into Earth, during the dinosaur age, and they kind of, I guess, they sort of slip into like comas. Like I don't know what happens exactly, but they crash land and all of them kind of go into like hypersleep until
Hmm.
eventually the mountain that they crash in erupts and it kind of like wakes them up, and then that kind of leads into the time period of when they're interacting with humanity. And one of the reasons why they turn into cars is because they scan the area and they see all the vehicles, and they're like, okay, this must be what populates this planet. We're going to sort of disguise ourselves. And that's why you get the song Transformers in Disguise, or Robots in Disguise, excuse me. And, you
Right.
know, theme song cartoon. And then that's when you get them interacting with humans and all that stuff. It kind of, they wake up in like the modern age, like millions of years later. So, um, this story of Beast Wars kind of follows that similar aspect, like it falls within the cartoon storyline, where I guess you can say Cybertron lives on, and
Mhm.
you know this like sort of like into the future where they have these Autobot and they have the war still raging on, which is kind of weird that the war is still raging on. This is on the pilot episode where it kind of follows that same plot line of the
Mhm.
Transformers, but it's like their descendants, like thousands of years later. And they're kind of traveling, going through this, and they end up going through this portal, and they travel back through time to a time period where it's like before the first ice age. So they,
Wow.
so imagine something in the future coming back in time to a point before the first ice age, because they make references to, and like in the season, the final seasons, they actually interact with the first Optimus Prime and the first Megatron, like the ones that we know and love today, like Bumblebee, Starscream, like all of them.
Ah.
So it's actually kind of interesting because, and the one of the things why it's called Beast Wars is because since they crash into Earth, like in before the first ice age, so there's like all these prehistoric animals like saber-toothed tigers and rhinos, rhinoceros, mammals, and then like there's like, even though the dinosaurs are dead, but they find like some of their bones and stuff, and so
Mhm.
their their disguise is that of animals and not robots.
Oh.
And similar to like how you have the Decepticons, I mean, sorry, the Decepticons is what they're called, but you know how you have like the Autobots and the Decepticons. Well, in this one you have the Maximals and the Predacons. so so
Wow.
the Predacons are the Decepticons, the Maximals are the Autobots. And to kind of decipher between the good and the bad guys, the Predacons decide to sort of take on the appearance of insects and reptiles, where the Maximals, who are the Autobots, take on the looks of that of mammals. So the only ones who
Wow.
actually keep the same names is obviously Optimus and Megatron, which is kind of weird. So the title of Prime is always passed down. So later on, Megatron is like a name or a title that is passed down to like the leaders and stuff. So uh, one of the things that make it really so great is that they're pretty much like they take on the exact same personalities of the ones that we like about. So imagine Starscream. You understand how Starscream is a jet. So they
Mhm.
have another character who pretty much is Starscream, but instead of transforming into a jet, he transforms into a pterodactyl.
Wow.
Yeah.
So still flying, basically.
Yeah, he's still flying. And oh man, I'm trying to think of what his name was. And I can't remember it exactly. I think it was uh I want to say Pterosaur, I think was like his name. I'm not entirely sure. Oh man, it's gonna. I think yes, it was Pterosaur. Okay, but yeah, he was pretty much Starscream because he was a pterodactyl, and he was like always trying to undermine Megatron, and Megatron's transformation was that of a T-Rex.
Of course.
Yeah, and then Optimus Prime, his transformation was an ape, like a giant gorilla.
Oh.
So it was kind of neat in that how they incorporated these animals. So the whole storyline is about them being stranded. So the whole thing is just them just battling each other because like they're trying to repair their ships, they're trying to figure out where they are, like in the galaxy, the time periods and all that. And that's the whole
Right.
thing. first, but then it's just them constantly doing conflict with each other. And with it being completely in 3D, it was really nice. It was pretty amazing for the 90s. I remember watching it and thinking like, "Oh my God, this is so awesome." But now I look back and I see bits of it on YouTube. I'm like, "Wow, this is kind of bad." But it looks like the very looking at it looks like the very first things of like Maya or 3ds Max, which are modeling softwares that are
Right.
used today. So you look at somebody who like maybe like some of my old school projects where I rendered it out in Maya, it looks a lot like that. Like that's what it reminds me of so much. But it had a pretty good reception. I was surprised just how much and it did have a video game of its own, which was like a third person shooter. And
Wow.
it had a pretty amazing reception, like all around, like especially in Japan. Um, but and the one thing that was pretty interesting about it after one of its later seasons is that once they realize where they are and like they're at Earth and what time period they're at, they actually Megatron, he actually tries to change history by trying to kill the original Optimus Prime
Oh.
because like they find the ships. They find the ships
Mm-hmm.
of like the original Optimus Prime, the original Megatron, like they find them like in status mode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually pretty amazing. Like they're like, oh, like we can change history, we can change, our future. And there's even a moment where I guess you can call it like Neanderthals, I guess, because it wasn't the Ice Age yet. Like they weren't. I guess you can kind of say man was like caveman stages or like the missing link
Mm.
stages or whatever you want to call it. So like there's points where Megatron tries to kill like Neanderthals and cavemen. Uh, Depending if you're like really big in science and the theory of evolution says like
Right.
that's where we come from. So Megatron thinks like, okay, if we can kill like this species and exterminate them, like there will never be no humans, and then they won't be able to assist them in the Great War and will succeed and all this other stuff. So they try to change the future or their future
Wow.
by killing them. So you get like in this crazy like time lapse scenario where where Megatron tries to kill like the first Optimus Prime, like the ones that we know from like the Generation One, and there's
Right.
like the series where it's like they're starting to like erase and like he's trying to change time. He's like if I kill him here, like you will never exist because like we're descendants of them and like we'll change like the war and all this other stuff. So there's a whole thing about time and stuff like that because of where they end up, but overall it was really my favorite because it was really mostly because of the theme music. The theme music was actually pretty intense, but as well as the characters because they were voiced really well and they did a really great job with the 3D animations. It was like my first exposure to the 3D animation, what it could be, and it just got me really hooked on it. And plus, it was the continuation of Transformers, which I was a really big fan of the G1 days.
Right. Wow. All that. All that in
Yeah,
one show.
yeah, it was pretty cool, and it gave a new thing of Transformers. You had the insects, the reptiles, and later on they start transforming. Like they eventually start getting like these upgrades and like these differences in their bodies and stuff, and it's actually pretty cool. And later on down the line, they get like more additions to their team because like other people crash land there as well because like falling back to the story, they're saying that people try to follow them, and you get updates about the war and stuff. So it's actually kind of neat.
Okay.
But it was from the '90s, and they actually came with a follow up series with another Beast Wars that followed it afterwards. Because the way the finale ends, they end up going back to Cybertron in the finale. Like they fix their ship and they figure out a way to go back to their own time and to their own Cybertron. And then there's another Beast Wars series that follows it after the fact, and it's still in 3D, but it continues the story of those characters' adventures, like in a different series.
Hmm.
It was pretty good,
Wow.
pretty good show, especially for Transformers fans. I'm pretty sure most of them or at least the 90s kids like myself would remember this one.
Sorry, I don't.
No, no, it's totally okay. But for the final thing, we're just gonna briefly talk about it a little bit because we're going over something a little bit more modern, a little bit more famous, and something that kind of combines both of our favorites of American and Japanese style. It's a really good hybrid and a very great collaboration, I thought. We'll just barely discuss it just a little bit, but I really want to give an honorable mention to the Batman Ninja movie because normally we talk about shows, but I just want to briefly mention this movie because it was really great. Because I know normally I talk about anime, and I have a few on my list, but I really just wanted to bring this up. Uh, the great collaboration of the Japanese and American uh, Batman Ninja movie. So with this being
Right.
complete 3D, this was a great movie. I loved every bit of it, especially the costume designs, because there's been a lot of fan art and just like, designs that people have come up with in terms of these characters of Batman, like a lot of different versions, like everything from sci-fi to medieval to the samurai version, which we actually see in this movie, and the ninja version. It was just overall the storyline was actually, it was a little odd. I mean, speaking of time travel, since I talked about Beast Wars, this again deals with time travel of the Batman and the Joker going back in time to feudal Japan and trying to change history, and just the overall adaptation of them going from modern to the Japanese samurai style for both the villains and the heroes was overall just an amazing designs. I thought was so much fun, especially Catwoman's. I thought it was just an amazing design of that ninja yet still cat-like demeanor.
I don't know. Her outfit, when I looked at her, her outfit seems very. I don't know. I'm just not used to that.
Hmm.
That is actually kind of almost seeing her full face and hair. Not used to that. Or is her using those actual weapons? Because usually she has these type of like metal claws, and she usually uses those. But seeing her actually use those type of weapons,
Well, they
huh?
were still pretty claws. They're still pretty much claws, but they were more like the Wolverine style, where they were on the handle and they were like really big and long. Where normally she has them like her like extended fingernails, like retractable, much like a real cat.
Right.
But this following into like the ninja Japanese style, she had the big three long claws, Wolverine claws with the handle and stuff that she fought with. But
Right.
I don't know. I just thought it was just kind of neat with the samurai face, and also her face mask too reminds me more of I don't know, just more like a masquerade ball kind of thing. But she still had like the bell and like her. I don't know. She still had the. You can still tell she was Catwoman, but it was just an interesting style and look, and as well as everyone else, like the Red Hood, Robin, and all the other different Robins, Nightwing, just the overall look of them, and Batman. Like seeing his change from like the beginning to the end was something pretty interesting to see.
And oh my god, the fight between Harley and Catwoman. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
I think the most interesting thing was just the facial animations for the Joker. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that just would have been like the funnest job. Probably the most fun anyone had working was doing the facial animations for the Joker because they were just over the top and ridiculous, and as well as just his face was like you look at his facial structure, like his long
Mhm.
chin and his long nose, and it's just like no one in the world has ever looked like that. But
The
it's Joker.
mustache.
Yeah, and the little mustache, like no one in the world looks like that. Like no one could ever, like you would have like your face would be deformed. Like no one's chin is that big, but it was still interesting to see, and the just the art alone was really great, and seeing, and there's a lot of other shows that have that same similar art style. but seeing like the CGI and the effects, which a lot of mech shows have, a lot of mech animes have, but it's still
Right.
great to see it on a big, on a big blockbuster screen. And they did an amazing job with the
They
music,
did.
style, and the art direction. I just think it was really cool. And one of my favorite scenes is just Batman when he's back there, like in those first few seconds when he pulls out his grappling gun and it shows him like looking around and there's like no buildings, like they're all like the tallest buildings, like a 2-story, and he's just like crap. Like his tactics don't work
Wow.
at all in like that building type structure, and it's just pretty interesting how much he has to adjust and adapt, and them bringing everybody to the scene and seeing how they interact with feudal Japan was actually pretty entertaining and amusing. But the fight scenes are pretty great, and like the explosions, and even though some people kind of harped on the actual story, like, oh, this doesn't make sense, and which is fine. I mean, it's time travel. I mean, who cares? Just sit back and enjoy it.
I love how every single character, like Poison Ivy, like everybody's like when you first look at it, you're like, who are these people? And then when they show the actual name, it's like, oh my god, it's them. Like I'm looking
Hmm.
at Poison Ivy's character right now. And it's like, well, that's completely different. She has pink hair,
Yeah.
like pinkish hair, and like like okay, the Poison Ivy we know she's like covered in like leaves and like
Hmm.
nature. But
Hmm.
then when you look at her, it's like just a little bit different.
Yeah.
Maybe just a little. But either way, it's great. You got Two Face, Deathstroke, everybody, mostly everybody in there.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, and
yeah, this is great. I hope it's
yeah.
not a penguin.
Yeah, just the looks of them, and just the overall designs, I think, was one of my favorites, and just how they bring everyone to keep their looks. And yeah, Poison Ivy, I would say probably is the only one that I didn't get at first. But after taking
Mhm.
like a second look at her, because everyone else, it's obvious who everyone else is. Even with
Right.
with Bane, like he's in like a sumo outfit, which is actually kind of hilarious because he's all about like being big and muscular. But the fact that he's in
Mhm.
a sumo outfit is actually pretty entertaining. So, but yeah, she was like the
Uh,
only one that I had to get a second look with because normally her hair is like red, so maybe that's why they just
right.
made it
Or she's
instead.
covered, or she's covered in some type of leaves or vines
Mm,
or something.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know who that was.
Yeah, she was the only one that required like some guessing, but everyone else, yeah, was really obvious. Even Two Face, like his samurai design was actually really cool, and still
Yeah,
keeping with
you
that
can.
tradition of
Right.
the two sided.
Yeah, that's how. That's why I said you can tell who they are. It's just not Poison Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, who are you?
Yeah.
But still, they made everyone pretty cool looking though. Like they.
Yeah, it was still
Yeah.
pretty great. And speaking of which, like the new, I mean, we'll have to talk about it another day. But since we've talked about Ninja Turtles and Batman, we gotta talk. Eventually, we gotta talk about the combination that they've had with the crossover.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. Most definitely, especially in the games too, when they
Mm-hmm.
had crossovers with Mortal Kombat and TMNT and all that great
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and the latest Injustice video game. So that'll be a
Mhm.
topic for another time. But for right now, everyone, we just want to say thank you for stopping by. And if you actually have listened to this whole podcast, we would appreciate like the comments, likes, and if you really liked us, you can subscribe so that way you would never miss an episode.
That's right. Please subscribe and like. And we will definitely be back with even more wonderful episodes. Once again, this has been Teosha Charles and my wonderful co-host Joseph. And bye bye. Hey guys, it's Tiasha Charles here from Animation Station. Just wanted to talk to you guys about our wonderful company, Elite 23 Global, which is a creative place for creative minds.
We have a wonderful board of branches, which is fashion, media, and even gaming. We have a team of creative minds coming together to make projects we always wanted to start, like this one. Also, come check out our clothing store called Elite 23 Shopping to check out the hottest and even cutest styles. If you want something new, come to Elite 23 Shopping. See you guys later. Bye!